Welcome to Talk About Digital, the place you will learn the truth about digital. On today's Unscripted TAD interview, we have none other than Mark Scully, the founder of LearnInbound. Being a professional SEO speaker myself, I can't wait to hear what it takes to put on such an amazing event as LearnInbound, as well as dive into some of the horror stories behind putting on an event. Nothing is scripted, and I don't have a list of questions in front of me. I'm just going to have an open and honest chat with Mark and see where the conversation takes us. People just don't understand what it is to put an event on, and obviously yourself, I mean, this is small fry compared to, what you set up and what you have to go through to, get speakers and get the event and everything. And it's just, I thought, well, I'll try something that's unscripted and just get people to come on. We'll have a chat and just basically so people understand behind the scenes of what it's actually like to set things up.
Yeah, I've certainly learned quite a lot over the last 5-6 years. It's certainly been an experience running everything from a meetup, similar to yourself, through to large conferences where you have a few hundred people and a lot more speakers to manage. Certainly, I think, it tests you in ways that you never expect. And you run into certain circumstances, managing expectations that as an attendee, you probably never foreseen.
Yes. I'm going to say running a free event compared to a paid to attend event is two totally different things. And, for a free event, obviously expectations are at a certain level, but if people's actually physically paid for a ticket, then suddenly the scales go up massively. I mean, how have you found that?
Difficult. Our first event was completely free to attend back in January 2015. But then the second event, we realized that we couldn't host it again without charging. And the experience was actually the same experience, but now we were charging €30 for a ticket to really cover the expenses. So trying to encourage people to pay for something that they were now getting basically very much similar to what was before was incredibly difficult. All of a sudden, people want to have a certain quality of foods, snacks, they want to have swag, they want to have, I'm not going to say different quality of speakers, but they want to have a more in-depth experience. They want to take away more from the events. It's extremely hard to manage that. Whenever it's free, you don't get as many complaints, but the moment you charge anything, even if it was £5, £10, people do have those expectations. They will compare you to so many other events out there. And it's difficult because you know yourself how much work goes into it and how much blood and tears and how many late nights and how you maybe lose your mind when you realize you're not going to hit your ticket goal, but yet you've maybe got a big venue that you need to fill. I think certainly it's extremely, extremely hard to ensure that you keep everyone happy. You're always going to get negative feedback. I think you kind of got to accept that as an event organizer. There's always going to be someone or some people that you can't please. And whenever you definitely transition from a free event to a paid event, you got to be prepared. The foundation needs to be solid. You need to know exactly how to run events. You need to know how to please your core demographic of people, those people who really want to attend, and still expect that even no matter what you do, you are going to get some comments coming back to you that are difficult to read. Like in my early days, I read every single tweet after an event. It could take me to 4 or 5 in the morning sometimes, but I read every single one. And it would take that one negative one to make me think that was a terrible event, even though I had maybe 199 positive ones. But yeah, I would take that to heart.
I don't think people actually understand what goes on in the background to put an event on. And it's like from your side, putting a big event on, what's the most challenging things running up to an event that you found?
That's a difficult one. There's so many things. I could list about 10 things. For me, certainly, I'm a marketer first. So whenever you put me into the organizational side of things, and managing relationships with speakers can be difficult whenever you're maybe facing 10 other pressing things to ensure that your event is hitting your commercial goals. Um, Even the BD side of things, so attracting sponsorship, I find can be really challenging because, again, it's a competitive landscape. There's so many other events out there competing for the same audience, and what is unique about yours? So that's difficult. I think every event organizer will probably lie about this, but I think most paid events do struggle to sell out. And I think so many events are keen to build a narrative around our event has sold out a week in advance or 2 days in advance or whatever it is. But the reality is most paid events, and including the ones I've run, have never actually sold out. It's a nice narrative to say that we have sold out, but it's not happened. So for me, the stress is around if you were speaking to sponsors and if you say we're going to have 500 people in attendance, now that's their expectation. They've paid you for that expectation. But maybe you're realizing a week or two out that maybe you're going to fall short for that. Not only are you going to upset your speakers because they're flying over to speak to an audience of a certain size, you're also going to upset those sponsors who you've worked pretty hard to nurture that relationship and to get them to pay you whatever amount it is, for them to maybe generate so many new leads for their business. So like that's been hard. All those things come together. All of a sudden, this is no longer you as a marketer hosting a great marketing experience and bringing together these marketing experts. You need to take yourself out of that and realize that this is now a commercial operation. That if you don't either hit your revenue goals, you're going to build up some debts, or if you actually don't have the number of people in attendance, then you're actually not going to be able to maybe get back those sponsors next time. You're maybe not going to keep those speakers satisfied because maybe they're coming quite some distance and maybe they've never heard of you before, but they're bought into your audience size. For them, it's an opportunity. That's kind of like a melting pot of like stress and frustration. And then you obviously need to pull off the event and make it as flawless as possible because your attendees are going to kick you if you get it wrong. So all
Yeah.
those things kind of come together. And I think it's difficult whenever you see so many people promoting themselves as being sellout events, but then you're looking at yours and you're thinking, why am I struggling? But also not realizing that they're probably going through the exact same challenges as you. So there's that level of imposter syndrome, I think, too, as an event organizer. And especially if you're a marketer who goes to marketing conferences, because then you're comparing those marketing conferences to yours, and you want to have the same quality experience or better. And it's so hard. Like, it's just such a challenge. I think for me personally, it's been a big learning curve. I've certainly hit points whereby I wanted to walk away from it, and times that I just felt like I really can't do this. And as a one-person team, it's been something I've learned a lot from. So whenever I see new events coming along, I'm excited for them, but I also want them to know that this is going to be so damn hard. Your excitement for
Yes.
your brand right now, it's exciting as it is. Just don't get carried away and scale it beyond your own capabilities. Don't grow to a certain size just because you're selling out tickets right now. You might sell out 100-person events. Doesn't mean you should go to a 1,000-person event just because it's nice narrative to say that you've 10 times your size in 2 years. So yeah, I could rant about this all day.
Yeah. Well, this is the whole point of talk about digital. It's about, telling people exactly how things are. And is when you turn up at an event as an attendee and everything's all set out. The speakers are there. It's all done for, it's like going into a hotel and it's all laid out for you. But people don't understand what goes on to get to that point.
Yeah.
And
I could give you a great example of this, Mark. This is one I've not spoke about publicly, so I'm going to give you the kind of the undercover insights into this. I won't mention the speaker because I'm never going to be that person, but we had a well-known person for LearnInbound last year. Like we'd worked hard to get this person. We knew they could speak about a certain topic. I hadn't spoken to any other conference organizers that worked with this speaker, but based off the profile, I thought to be a perfect fit. So for once, I didn't do my homework to the extent I probably should have. But the conference came along. I realized the communication from this one person was pretty poor. Like we got their slides, I think about 3 hours before they got on stage. They missed every single deadline. I never reviewed the slides. I couldn't. By the time I got them, I was actually already stressed out from the conference. But then I stepped outside the room just before their talk was about to start. And then I realized that they asked a member of our audience to get up on stage while they were walking onto the stage during the walk-on music to record them using his mobile phone, his walk-on, so he could use it in a promo video about himself as a public speaker. Now, not only did I not really get to review his slides, I didn't authorize that happening. And from a GDPR perspective, he captured footage of our audience without anyone giving permission. And the day after the conference, he included this in a promo video, and he was running Facebook ads with footage of our audience in campaigns. So I won't get into it too much, but as an attendee, you're looking at that thinking, this guy's so cool. Look at him, he's got someone following him up on stage, recording video. This guy's a superstar. He works with some major brands. I feel special I got to see him speak. As an event organizer, you're thinking of things that you shouldn't be thinking of. That probably include throwing him into the back of the car and pushing him off a cliff. Like you see yourself as an organizer, you see these things, but as an attendee, you don't. But all I could think as an organizer was, this person I'm never going to work with again. Anyone asks for my opinion, I'm going to tell them to avoid them. And his demands were ridiculous. And he was looking for a podium just before he got up on stage, when we never give podiums to speakers, because as an organizer, I hate podiums. They're terrible for photo opportunities, and people stand at them, they don't move. And
going on to the speaker side, this whole argument about speakers being paid against speaking for free. What's your stance on this as a organizer point of view?
That's a good question. I like to say that every speaker should be paid for their time, because as an attendee, you don't realize that maybe 30, 40, 50 hours of preparation has went into that 30-minute talk. Some speakers might have a couple hundred slides. There's a lot of research and time that goes into that. So where possible, I think every single speaker, regardless of their profile or whether or not they're completely new to public speaking, should actually receive something. But as an event organizer, certainly myself, and I'm sure you can relate to this, when you're running a free meetup, when you don't have anything to give to them, you can't just say, I'm going to pay you whatever amounts to do this, because you yourself, you're doing this in your spare time. So I think then it's realistic to not pay a speaking fee. I think where possible, you should be giving the speaker something to help them move on to maybe the next speaking gig, which for me is, if it's an in-person event, I pay for a professional photographer to come along. I get photos of them publicly speaking on the stage. I'll send them the photos and I'll say you can use them for anything. And a lot of speakers have used them on their own personal websites. They've used them in slide decks, etc. They've used them to move on to maybe bigger gigs like Brighton SEO or Search Love or MozCon, some speakers have, and past pint-sized marketing events. They've got something from that. The same way, if you can record the audio for the events, give them that. You know, if you're doing a free event, give them that. That's useful. They can turn into a podcast. They can embed it on their website. They can stick it on YouTube. Whatever they want to do with it, that's useful too. And same way, if it's like virtual events like this, like record it. Allow them to get free access to it. So if they want to share it with a conference organizer because they're pitching for a speaking gig, allow them to use that.
Yeah.
Don't gate it. Give it to them.
In fact,
But for, yeah.
There are speakers that has approached me for talk about digital that actually used the actual talk from your event as their sort of showcase.
Yeah, that's amazing though. Like that's what you want though. Like you find that, especially for newer speakers, they need some kind of assets to really pitch themselves to bigger conferences. Because bigger conferences can need to do their research. So your events, my events, they can be that stepping stone for them. They can help them move along. For more established speakers, for them, like some people are quite happy to do free events anyway. It's still some level of exposure. But I hate saying exposure is the reward for giving up your time because that's usually bullshit. But I think for bigger conferences like LearnInbound, to be completely honest, like we've never had the budget for a speaking fee, and that's always been the case. On the 2 occasions I've actually found budgets, which was neglecting other things in favor of it, those speakers did not perform very well. I find them very hard to work with. They were quite demanding. Our audience did not actually enjoy their talks. So I'm not saying people shouldn't ask for a fee. I think they should, especially for conferences charging maybe $500 for tickets, $1,000. I think there's definitely budget there for it. But I think the minimum any paid event should do is cover travel, flights and hotel, where possible, if you can budget for it, taxi journeys, speakers dinner, things like that should be the minimum in every case. But I think, you know what, for free events, give them as much as possible that they can use. They are putting in time. It might be even a 10-minute session, 20-minute session, whatever it is, but you know there's countless amount of work that goes into that. So like for me, I try to send the speakers a gift. If I can afford it, I'll send them an Amazon voucher. I'll pay that out of my own pocket. But the minimum I'll do is I'll get the videos edited and I'll send them to them. So at least they can use them.
Yeah, I mean, especially online and on social media, it's like this constant argument that's going on that the speaker community says, they just see it as though, well, they charge for tickets, so why can't they pay me? And that's the sort of way they see it. I mean, I've spoken at some events and the other speakers are saying, well, they won't even pay for me accommodation or travel or anything, just nothing. I'm here, they promised me an audience of 700 people and there were like 100 people in the audience. So they've invested all the time and energy and personal money to be there, and they never even got to use any footage or anything. They just didn't get anything. And it's situations like that that does exist in some, not all events, but some events that sort of puts you think, oh, well, why should I bother? I've just spent, say, £1,000 to travel and do all this and accommodation and everything. And it's just, and now I've got like a week's worth of work to catch up on that I've missed.
Yeah, it's hard because I definitely do think there's a lot of conferences that can afford to pay for speakers. They choose not to. But in the same way, as a conference organizer, I also know the cost of organizing a conference. It's a hell of a lot more expensive than most people think, and the profit margin is quite small. So it's not just the organizer always being difficult. I think there's a lot of occasions where organizers just cannot pay speakers. And other things could be neglected in favor of paying for speakers, but I think the conference itself wouldn't be reputable. I think you'd be cutting back on things like catering, which is extremely expensive. I know for LearnInbound, about 20% of the budget goes purely towards food and drink. And that's basic. Like, that's basic stuff. That's your tea and coffee breaks. That's your biscuits. That's your small selection of food options at lunchtime. That's not a buffet to choose from. And that doesn't even include maybe a beer after. But yeah, people would see the conference and think, okay, so the tickets, the maximum price for a ticket was 249. The capacity of the venue is 500. So then they're trying to work out the figures. And you're thinking, it's not like that. But people do think like that. And I totally get it. So it's a tough situation. I see those conversations happening on Twitter quite a lot. And I 100% emphasize with speakers who are thinking, why am I not getting paid? I pitched to this, but they're saying no. I get that. But I think the other side of the argument needs to be that, and this is harsh to kind of acknowledge, but some speakers have much bigger pull than other speakers.
Yeah.
You could put one name on your lineup and that name could sell half your tickets.
Yeah.
So what's the return on that speaker? I could spend maybe 10 grand on one speaker, but I can maybe make 10 times that back in ticket prices and ticket sales. So does that mean that I should spend 10 grand on somebody that's just starting out? Probably not. And I know that sucks. I know people are going to look at that and think, conference organizer is an asshole. He's not paying every single speaker. But yeah, we do need to think of it that way too. Like, yourself from organizing events, certain names will share of their audience, which is quite large. You'll see more signups off the back of it. You'll see there's more excitement around one particular event because of that speaker. And like, you can see the return on that. But yeah, it's maybe 19 out of 20 speakers in your lineup. There might be amazing speakers and the content might just be as good, but you just don't see it coming back in terms of numbers.
Yeah.
So I think that's hard because then people dig a bit deeper and think, okay, what is it about this person? He's a white male. He's being paid this percent, but this group then is not being paid at all. Is there more to this? In some cases, there might be, because some event organizers are just horrible people who don't have full diversity among their lineup. Or maybe they're looking purely at the financial return and thinking, for example, Gary Vee, I really hate the guy. Everything he comes out with, he just should go away. We don't need him anymore. But yet he would maybe charge a couple $100,000 to speak in events. But yet the organizer may sell out just off him.
Yeah.
Like, it's tough. Like, I don't have an answer for it. Like, it's really, really hard. I think I completely understand why speakers would be upset by this, but as a conference organizer, I know I can maybe put 2 or 3 names on a lineup, and that would drive a certain percent of tickets. And I think you should have like a lineup that really gives upcoming speakers an opportunity. And I think you should also think about what is your hook as well. And the topic and the theme of the conference alone is not going to be enough to hook people in, because unfortunately people still go after certain speakers, as in they'll still go to a conference because they can hear certain people speak. So it's difficult. It's really, really hard. Like, me as an attendee hates a lot of the practices that conference organizers follow as a marketer. But as a conference organizer, when you're going through those desperate moments of struggling to sell tickets, and I think every conference organizer has been there, I'm not saying some of your values you throw out the window, but you're going to compromise where you can. And I certainly have had to, and it's certainly burdened me in some ways, but in other ways, it's maybe got me through that one event and kept me surviving to the next one.
I'm going to say is you mentioned like up and coming speakers. So, in your opinion, what do up and coming speakers need to do in order to get the recognition and start being accepted as speakers on events? What's the journey for them? What do they need to do?
Yeah, like I find that from working with people, sometimes it just comes through a referral more than anything. Like, obviously, where possible, new speakers should be putting themselves out there, just not in terms of events, but in terms of what they're writing and what they're sharing and what useful information to help them to build themselves an expert in the industry. Like, one speaker I have coming up before the year is over, he hasn't really done public speaking at all, but yeah, I found a template he put together in the content marketing space that was really useful to me and my clients. I reached out to him and said, look, this is amazing. I have a few questions about it. Also, I'm looking for potential speakers, and I think you have something interesting to share. He said, yeah, I haven't really done public speaking before, but yeah, I could do a 20-minute session. I thought, cool. So like it can start sometimes with that. But also I find that if you do know a particular speaker that maybe has a little bit of pull, sometimes it's just getting to know people. I think that's incredibly powerful. A lot of the people who I've worked with, who I did not know before, who are new to the industry, the great groups that have been set up, like the Slack community, Women in Tech SEO, which is amazing. Like, I mean, that's given so many people an opportunity to get themselves out there. Like, I really take my hats off to that group. Like, that's incredibly powerful. I think sometimes it comes from getting to know others. And I think as long as you're doing something that's remarkable and that you're putting yourself out there, you're creating great content, I think that will help you massively. I think if you expect to become a public speaker but do very little for your own personal profile, it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I think obviously people only want to go and see speakers because of the reputation they have.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, I find that, well, you know, they might have done wonderful things and might have something great to say, but if they don't have any online presence or any personal brand awareness, then, you know, are people going to pay to go and see them if they don't know who they are?
It depends. Like, I think as a new speaker, start with free events. I think that's where you need to build your profile to begin with. I think if you go from zero to pitching to paid conferences, it's going to be a tough struggle because, again, as a conference organizer, you're still thinking what's the return on spending whatever amount it is bringing a speaker to whatever location. That's the harsh reality of it. But if I could say I seen the speaker present at these two meetups, I've watched the recordings, I've seen the positive sentiment around their talk, I can justify bringing them over to Dublin. That's much easier sale. So I think free events, especially free meetups like your event, my event, like they've been great opportunities for so many people to get themselves out there. I think that has to be the starting point for a lot of people. You got to perfect your craft a little bit. You got to know how to put together a compelling slide deck. You got to know how to speak to camera if it's a virtual event. You got to know how to keep an audience engaged. You've got to receive that initial feedback, which might be really harsh, but will help you grow massively as a speaker. And I think you have to grow like your confidence over time. Public speaking's hard. Like I personally will never be a public speaker. Can't stand it. Like I really can't stand standing in front of a group of people. It's not my thing. So I think, you know what, starting out, you just got to test what works, and just take that on the chin sometimes. You got to see what type of person you want to be on stage, what type of topic you want to specialize in, um, what type of events maybe are fit for you. Like you might find that you're quite technical, which might rule out more generalized marketing conferences. Um, I think it's just a learning over time. And I think from chatting with new people starting out, I would just say to them, look, just test a few events. You learn so much about yourself, the free events. So whenever you do pitch to a paid event, you'll be quite confident in what you can talk about, and there'll be no doubt that you'll be a good fit for that speaking panel. So like, it is tough. That's why a lot of people should start with writing to begin with. Get their thoughts down, build out the profile, write really in-depth articles, really in-depth guides, speak with other people in the industry, then start to specialize, hone in on a specific area, then test out some talks at free events. If they perform well, then at least you're more confident in what you can do.
What was that entity that suddenly, going from a small free event to this, large paid event that's spectacular with really powerful speakers? And there must have been something that suddenly, like a light bulb moment, that suddenly changed everything. Is like, what was that light bulb moment for you?
Yeah, I think for me especially, there was a hunger and a competitiveness side of me, because especially in Ireland, like similar to you, I guess, I go to a lot of international conferences. I would go to Brighton SEO, which is for me international, I have to leave the country, or I go to MozCon or Search Love or other events. But yeah, I looked at Ireland and thought, okay, there's just nothing here that excites me. Nothing at all. Like, we tested smaller events, and then we realized there's a hunger, and can we bring that to Dublin? So for me, I just really wanted to grow a community first and foremost. I wanted to grow something a bit different, and I wanted to give marketers an opportunity to really learn from industry experts and to share their own stories and experiences. So for me, it was just, as a marketer, first and foremost, it was an event organizer. I just wanted to be part of something that was more than myself and more than a handful of people. That's what got me excited, and still gets me excited, is whenever you arrive in a room full of people that are doing what you do, and they can relate to the challenges you're going through, and they're also excited about what they're about to learn. I think that alone gets you through those dark nights of sitting alone trying to organize an event. I think that still excites me. So I think it was just, I was a marketer first, not an event organizer. I'm still a marketer first. The moment I stop being excited as a marketer is the moment I stop being an event organizer. I really just enjoy seeing people like myself, and I enjoy seeing new people come into the industry and get excited about it. Like, that's fun. That's what gives me energy. So yeah, it's been a fun 5-6 years doing it.
Good. So if you was to pick one ultimate moment where you were there in the crux of one of your events, and suddenly you felt that overwhelming feeling of, oh my God, look what I've done. I mean, do you get that feeling? Obviously the run up to an event, it's so stressful, and on the day it's so stressful, but do you actually sometimes sit back and think, look what I've actually done? It's really, really hard work, but look at it. Look where it is now.
Yeah. During the events, no. If I'm being honest, I never get that feeling during the events, because I'm a problem solver. All I see are problems. So no matter what feedback I'm getting at that point, I still see problems. And I think I'll always be that way. But then afterwards, so like I mentioned earlier, I'm that kind of weird person that has to read every single tweet, and I have to see every bit of feedback after. It's like, I have to hear the thoughts of speakers, I have to hear the thoughts of attendees. Those moments then, when I have a chance to sit back and relax, then I'll think, okay, so it was something more than I was expecting. There was no big problems. There was no technical issues. There was no real negative feedback. People enjoyed it. That's the time then I kind of reflect and think, okay, it went okay. I think it went pretty well. People enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was worth those days of unmeasurable stress where you're just hating life and thinking, why the hell did I organize this? I could have went on holiday this year. Jesus, like this is just hell. But then after it, you think, actually, it was okay, right? I'm going to do it again. And then you go off and do it again. Then you stick another date in the calendar and away you go. Like, there's always that. Like, I mean, I think every event organizer, at least a week out, will think to themselves, why in the hell am I doing this? Like, why did I choose to bring this stress upon myself? Why am I trying to deal with this at the weekend when I could be relaxing watching Netflix? But then after you think, you know what? I done something amazing. People enjoyed it. There's definitely demand to do this again. I got to bring these people to this location at the same time. They really enjoyed it. All the positive feedback has been great. People have been telling me how great it's been. Then you think to yourself, now I can rest. It's great. Then a
Yeah,
week later, you're like, okay, let's do it again.
yeah. Rest for a week, then start the next year after.
Yeah, it's tough because I don't think I've ever felt more exhausted after doing anything than a conference. Like it takes me about 2 weeks of isolation and sleeping and watching Netflix and eating takeaways and just doing nothing else before I'll ever think, okay, maybe I should look at the landing page to update the copy, or maybe I should send out an email campaign, or maybe I should start organizing the next one. It takes around 2 weeks, at least from a conference, before I'll ever feel normal again.
Yeah,
And I think that's okay because for an introvert like myself, I do feel exhausted by even those conversations throughout those 2 days. Talking to people's hard. Like I
yeah,
find I just want to go back to my dark corner in the room and kind of just turn off the lights and hide. So 2 days of just relenting conversations with strangers, like I find that difficult, and on top of all the other pressure.
yeah. Do you feel as though that when you're in the midst of the conference, because you're the conference organizer, that you're like a magnet and everyone hones in on you? And do you feel like that sort of pressure that, there's like loads of people suddenly want to talk to you all at once?
Um, it's a nice feeling, if I'm being honest. It's a nice feeling to think that people think something of what you've just done, and people just want to talk to you about it, and people are excited. Like I think that's probably the really good thing as a conference organizer you get to take away from it is that satisfaction. Like I mean, for myself, I'm quite happy hiding in the back of a room behind the AV team where no one can see me with my laptop. But it's also nice that people will come up to me and say, look, I really learned so much today. I made lots of friends today. I got to meet these people I've been following on Twitter for years who have been speaking at conferences around the world. But yeah, I got to meet them for the first time. Like that's exciting. Like the first conference I ever went to was probably Brighton SEO. And like I was really excited the moment I stepped into, I think it was the Dome then, Brighton Dome.
Yeah,
And I remember walking around thinking, there's people like me here. I used to be that SEO on a team and the only SEO on a team who didn't have anyone to talk to. But yet now it was like, I think 1,000 people there back then. And all of a sudden, I just seen Keldon walking around. I thought he was like Jesus. Like, to me, he was just like this special figure. I thought, oh my
yeah,
God, this guy, I've been following for so long. He's created this. Like he's really special. He's brought all of us together. I have so much respect for that. In the same way, when I've went to other conferences, like I went to MozCon years ago, and the feeling I got when I stepped into the convention center in Seattle for the first time, and the music's playing, and there's all these people there who do what I do, and there's all these amazing speakers I've been following. Like what I got from that is what I carried over to LearnInbound. If I could even give people 1% of that feeling I had just there and then, to go back to the office and think, I'm always facing deadlines, I'm always facing pressure, I'm always doing reporting, I'm always dealing with client issues. But yet there's people out there as excited as I am about the industry and about learning. if I can make people excited enough to go to my events, and if they want to share that with me, that's great. I'm always here to talk to. But if they can also share that among each other, like that makes all that stress worth it. Like it's so exciting when you see people who enjoy what they do, especially new people to the industry.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a case of, there's so many things written online. There's so many things being said, and so for someone new to the industry coming on and to being in one place that actually they can get the right sort of knowledge and the right information, is so valuable to them, because a lot of people I speak to that's coming into the industry, I mean, they're just overwhelmed with the amount of information that's out there. So what should I read? What should I actually, who should I look at? Who should I learn? Who actually tells the truth? What is it? And I think to go to a conference that can put that on is so valuable. And I don't think a lot of people really understand the value of what, as a conference organizer, you're giving. Literally the ability to see people who you've personally vetted to make sure they're right to be there.
Yeah, it's special. Like it is a special feeling to think that you've pulled that off and to see that response. There's nothing quite like an in-person event. I could rant all day about my issues for virtual events because
Yeah.
I just don't like them. I say that as a person who hosts them myself. I just don't like virtual events. I don't
Yeah.
think I ever will.
I
But
mean,
that in-person event thing
yeah.
is it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, talk about digital. I did register the name because it was going to be an in-person event. And obviously, something happened, and suddenly it was turned into a monthly online event. It were just, because of the nature of the game. But I do really, I mean, I do really love going to an event, because networking with people, talking to people, and it's that feeling when you walk in, and to have that, it's just conversations that you have, you're never ever going to have online,
Yeah.
because people don't open up the same. That's how it is. When do you think it's going to, well, I don't think it's all going to be new normal, isn't it, moving forward? But when do
Yeah.
you think in-person events will start to, happen again?
See, because I don't have one in the calendar, I'm probably not going to be as optimistic as other people with my answer. I personally don't think in-person events are going to happen again within the next 6 months. I think if you're hosting events with maybe over a couple hundred people, I don't think you should be thinking this is going to happen within 12 months. If you're asking me when I think large-scale conferences with maybe 1,000 people or 2,000 people are going to be feasible, I would probably say 18 months. And the reason is I don't think people are going to feel comfortable going back to large crowds of any description. And I don't think a lot of companies are going to want to sponsor those kind of experiences anytime soon either. I think the physical conferences, the in-person ones, are going to feel this ripple effect for the next couple of years. I think any conference that was pitching themselves as being the largest, whatever conference in the space, I think they're probably going to find that is going to really negatively impact their ability to sell themselves going forward. I think the smaller events like meetups are going to be the first ones to come back. I think anything 100 people or less, probably in about 6 months' time, I hope. But I do think the larger ones, they're not going to happen even this time next year. I don't think so. I really don't see it happening. I honestly think people in the back of their minds are going to think, okay, do I risk it? And unless there is some kind of vaccine, or have I adapted to virtual events for the moment? Can I actually justify paying for travel expenses to this event? Maybe not. I think speakers are going to be pretty reluctant to jump immediately into doing international travel for conferences again. And I think a lot of companies are going to be really reluctant to allow people to travel to international conferences for the next 12, 18 months. I do think the events industry is really going to feel this for a long time to come. And I think we need to be realistic about this. I've seen some conferences that have been planned for, say, August, September, October, kind of wait till the last minute to decide to pivot to virtual. I think it's been quite clear for some time that no conference is happening this year in person. And I think if you're planning one for Q1, Q2 next year, you should be reconsidering it right now. I don't think it's going to happen. I could be wrong, and I do hope I am wrong, but I personally would not be putting my money towards in-person conference anytime soon. And as an event organizer, I would be looking towards 2022 for doing LearnInbound again. I would have no intention of doing it next year. I just don't see it working. I think I'd struggle to sell tickets, struggle to get sponsorship, and spend a lot of money on marketing to get those few ticket sales. So I don't want to be negative about this, but I do think if you have an event management company or you're running a marketing conference and you have staff to pay, I feel your pain. I do. I think it's tough. I think it's really difficult to even pay staff at the moment. I think if you're organizing a free event, you're okay. You can hold off. Virtual is fine for you, but those that have staff to pay, I really do feel sorry for you. I just don't see things returning anytime soon. I could be wrong, and I hope I am wrong, but I really don't think I am on this.
What's the craziest speaker pitch you've ever received?
Oh, see, now I'm kind of afraid that if I tell you that they're gonna know this because they've also been a speaker too. um, Personally, I've got a problem with speakers who think they're comedians because it's a marketing conference, and I think we're moving too much forward towards using gifs and jokes in talks and less away from we're moving too far away from the educational piece. So there was one pitch that I got and the whole talk, and I did see the deck. It was all gifs. Like it was trying to get across several different points, but the formatting and the way it was presented was just terrible. And the actual theme of the talk didn't make a lot of sense. But because they thought it was funny and thought the SEO community would think it was a great talk, and again, this was from like a well-known speaker, that was probably the stupidest pitch I've ever seen in my life because we're a marketing conference for Christ's sake. I'm sorry, but like you can inject some comedy and a few swear words into your talk, but if you're doing something just to get a reaction from the audience, I'm sorry, but that's bullshit. Like I've got no time for that. You want people to remember something, you want something that can put into action. But I think we're just trying to give people a laugh when you're pitching yourself as a speaker. I don't know. That just doesn't sit right with me. I think that's a lot of speakers are starting trying to get reaction from the audience just to keep attention, but then they're not remembering that people are there to learn. That's kind of what frustrating me a little bit, and I've seen that among quite a few pitches lately. Is that I think you know what, if you're trying to give a talk, people have to learn. If you're failing on that piece, then nothing else matters.
For the up and coming speakers, from an organizer that's gone through thousands of these speaker pitches, what sort of pitch does an up and coming speaker have to do in order to get even on the maybe list?
Okay, I'm going to name two people this time because the two best outlines of talks I've seen have been from two women in the industry who have done amazing work and rightfully have moved on to some amazing conferences. So these two people have put together like really in-depth Google documents that give a breakdown of exactly what their talk is going to cover, the core themes of each slide. And as an organizer, you look at and you immediately think, amazing. Like, I mean, they've clearly put in a huge amount of efforts They're not just putting together like a 50 words outline for the talk. Do you really want you as an organizer to know that this is going to be a fit for your audience and that you can provide feedback if we do accept them as a speaker? I think that collaborative approach just shows me that they're not just pitching talks. They actually want to speak to your audience and they want to ensure that it resonates with your audience. So one speaker I thought was amazing is Jill Quick. I think Jill is definitely top of her game. I recommend her to every conference organizer I know, and she has spoken at some amazing conferences. She's probably the easiest speaker in the world to work with. So kind, so generous. She does go to certain levels to ensure that it's the best talk. Like, I mean, Jill is amazing. I can't say more about Jill than what she does about herself when she puts together that kind of pitch. Like, it's just really in depth. The other speaker is Shannon McGurk, so from ERA. Like, I mean, again, she puts together like a really clear outline of what her talk is about. Like, you want to know that this is going to be a fit for your audience. And whenever a speaker is open to feedback and they're willing to tailor it once you give them audience demographic data, like, I mean, to me, that shows that person is just not pitching events. It shows me that they've taken the time to understand your event, to understand what talks have happened in the past at your events, and when that topic has been delivered before. That shows me that they haven't just picked out maybe 20 events, sent out the exact same pitch, and hope that one of them lands. So it's a bit like PR, I guess, in that sense, that everyone wants to feel like you've taken the time to understand them. Or even link building, like, I mean, the amount of crap that's out there. So some of you
Well,
stop
I was going to
saying,
say we haven't got time for that. I don't that
no,
conversation.
yeah, we don't want a high mark insert domain name. I was looking at your article on this website and I thought it was amazing. Please insert this link. So
Yeah.
like anyone that can kind of say to me, you know what, I've taken the time to look at LearnInbound. I've seen that you've had these 3 speakers present about digital PR in the past, but did focus specifically on these areas. I would like to talk about this. And I've put together this Google document that actually gives a full in-depth look at what my talk will be about. And if I was to be accepted as a speaker, I would actually tailor some more to your audience once you can give me some information. That to me makes me think, okay, that person really has taken time here. They've really put in some time into their pitch. They understand my events. Why would I not work with them? I'm confident then. So even for a new speaker, you don't need to have a lot of experience, but you need to show that you're just not pitching to every event out there, that you've actually invested some time into looking at that event, that you know this will work.
Yeah.
Immediately, I'm going to start listening.
Is there anything that really grinds your boat? Is that you've come across over the past few years that keeps happening? Is that what is it that really annoys you about things?
Okay, a few things. So one thing that really pisses me off about events is false advertising, particularly saying that you've extended early bird tickets. No, you've not extended early bird tickets. And no, you're not thanking people because it's a bank holiday Monday, or that's an Easter break or a Christmas break. It's not a special ticket. It's because no one bought you a fucking ticket. That's what's happening here. You're not extending it because you're rewarding your audience. You're extending it because no one bought your damn ticket. That's it. Like, I mean, you're not extending your early bird ticket. You're not making it exclusive. You're not doing any of that. It's because no one has bought your ticket and you're shitting yourself. So you're sitting there looking at it and thinking, I haven't made enough money. What desperational tactic can I use to sell more tickets? Let's act like that we're doing something for our audience. No, you're not. I'm sorry, you're not doing that because you're trying to thank your audience and not because it's now payday and you think that you're giving them a better opportunity to purchase a ticket. It's because no one wants your damn tickets. That's the damn thing about it. Like, no one is buying them and you're thinking, oh Christ, what am I going to do? So stop that. The other thing I think is just even around naming conventions of tickets. Personally, I've put together too many email campaigns talking about early birds and other ticket price names. Like, I can't write that copy anymore. is too generalized. I just don't have it in me. I'm just gonna call it something else. I hate the naming conventions in the events industry. It just doesn't sit well with me. I can rant all day about that. The other thing, so I think as an organizer, it's getting harder and harder to stand out because speakers are speaking at so many other conferences. So particularly for paid events, if I looked at a speaker and I seen their last 5 events they spoke at were free events, now how do I sell them in as a speaker to a paid event? What is so unique about their talk now that justifies paying a certain amount of money to hear them speak again? That's the tough thing as an event organizer, especially if they're delivering the same talk as that free event. And I speak as someone that's done free events. I'm still doing free events, but I've also done paid events. So it's hard. Like I find it harder. Like you need to really unearth those unheard of names if you're running paid events, in my opinion. Those people that you know are brilliant, that your audience is maybe not familiar with, and you think actually can deliver an amazing talk. But to do that, you need to have a brand that people buy into. So if your event is completely new and you're charging for tickets, but you're using speakers no one's ever heard of, you're probably going to struggle. But if you're an established event, so the likes of MozCon, they can give new speakers an opportunity to get on stage because they're pretty confident that they're going to sell a certain percent of tickets. I think it's important for those events to really go after the upcoming speakers. So the ones that don't, and maybe just focus on purely the more well-known keynote speakers, I get frustrated then because those events should actually be really helping to diversify the lineups. And when they don't, that's annoying. Which also brings me on to male lineups. So, or a sausage fest type lineups where you're just all men on the lineup. It's like, dear God, like what's going on here? Like, I mean, if you look at lineups and they all look like you, there's a problem, I think, and there's too many events like that and they're rightfully getting called out. I think it's important for you as an event organizer to ensure that you're delivering an experience that appeals to as many people as possible and that you're fully representing everyone in the industry. I think if you don't do that, you're failing. And I think it's right that people call you out for that. And I say that as someone that's in the first year of LearnInbound, I think around 70 or 80% of our speakers were all white males. Year 2, we definitely improved upon that and we keep improving. But I think those events that don't listen to that feedback, but yet continue focusing purely on the speakers that help sell tickets, like that makes me angry. Like that really frustrates me because, like, there's so many amazing people, so much talent. They're not getting the representation they should be. So whenever that doesn't change, like I get angry and I will be calling them out too. So I think it's so important, especially for free events, to really give people a platform, to give them whatever they need to help to pitch the bigger events and to help nurture them. Like that to me is the lifeblood of the industry. Like you really need to help them.
You give so much of yourself for other people, but is there anything like our audience or anybody watching this can do for you? What is it, they can do it as a thank you, a return for you, instead of it all being just one-sided?
Like for me lately, the one thing I've actually enjoyed is purely helping completely new people to the industry. Like especially people that have really recently lost their jobs. So like I created spreadsheets and this was purely for Irish marketers to insert their information if they lost their job, highlight what their experience is, highlight what they're looking for. I would say to everyone right now that everyone has faced struggles at times, and sometimes people do need help, and sometimes people are not comfortable asking for it. And I'd probably say I was really like that when I started out. I was afraid, I was nervous, I was unsure of myself. I didn't know where to go, I didn't know who to speak to. If you can help one other person who is just struggling right now, even if you can just point them towards someone that needs someone temporarily for freelance work, do that. Like I've helped 5 or 6 people over the last 2 months get 6 to 8 week contracts. And for them, that was enough to cover rent for a month or two. And it was also enough for them to stick on their CV a short-term contract, which helped them get like a permanent job shortly after that. Help those kind of people out. Like for me, that's satisfying. I get more satisfaction out of that than I do out of events. So whenever there is community groups like the Women in Tech SEO, which is amazing, help those people. And if you are part of that group, help all the people, bring them into the group, ask them what struggles they're facing right now. Because a lot of people do not want to share the challenges they're facing. And if you can give them some level of comfort and some level of help, like I get satisfaction from that. Like I really enjoy seeing new people to the industry. And I certainly can't relate to a lot of people. I have different background to a lot of other people, as you do too. But where possible, at least try to empower others and try to be that midpoint between maybe where they are now and trying to get a full-time job. So even if you review a CV, and I do a free CV workshop every week, like I do it for a couple of hours for clients. We do it for like 3 or 4 hours every Thursday. Even send people my way. If you think they're struggling right now and if they're unsure of themselves, just send them my way. If you don't have time, I'll look at their CV, I'll go through it, I'll rewrite it. So just give some of your time. Like we're lucky that I have a job right now, you have a job right now, we can pay our bills, but there's a lot of other people who cannot do that. And we don't know what's going on in their lives at home. It might be difficult. So just give some of your time every week, even if it's 10 minutes. Introduce them to someone else. There's so much you can get from just helping some people new to the industry who maybe don't have a Twitter following, they don't know any industry experts. They can't afford maybe a marketing book right now. They don't know what blog articles to read. They don't know what resources are good. Just give them something back. So I'll ask for that because for me, that helped me when I was starting out.
What should new people in the industry be reading right now?
New people to the industry, that's a tough one because again, depends on the area that they want to focus in on. I think there's so much to get from just getting a mentor out of the industry rather than just reading. I think, if you actually just build out your own basic Twitter profile and if you do actually put together a list of experts, and again, I'm happy to share who you should be following. From that alone, you'll start to build out your own reading list. You'll start to see what is useful. I think, again, like the most important skill for any marketer is to treat themselves like a student. Like it is a continual improvement, like it is continually learning, and it's hard at times. Like, I mean, at times you just want to turn off your laptop, you're frustrated. But when you're starting out, you need to just be so hungry. You got to absorb information, even in areas you're not working in. That's important. So that's not really a reading resource, but I think you should actually just establish who are the people that are sharing good information and people in certain areas. So technical SEO, for me, I always recommend Barry Adams because even though he swears a lot, he does share a lot of useful information. I'm good friends with Barry, I can say that. Um, I probably would stay away from more generalized marketing blogs, in my opinion. I'm not going to mention them, but
Yeah.
the major inbound marketing ones, I would stay away from and go towards more specialized ones. I don't want to recommend too much because I think I'll annoy some people.
It doesn't take much in this industry.
I think every week it's like a knife fight in the SEO industry. It's like who's going to survive. So I try to stay away from that, and I think it's so important as a new marketer to kind of separate the negativity from
Yeah.
the positivity. There's people out there who are just waiting for a fight, no matter what you say. And right now, feelings are quite tense because we're in a difficult situation, every single person, and people just want to kick off. So don't allow those early days in the industry when you see these types of things to make you feel like that as a marketer. I think that's important. I think there's just so much negativity right now, and I think there's a lot of good people out there too. I think you just need to know how to separate them. And I think it's just important to be confident enough to reach out to someone and say, you've got a problem. I'll give you one example, and I will name a person. So back when I worked for a company in my early days in SEO, I was working for a company called Daft in Ireland, and I was unsure of how to map out a new sitemap architecture for the website. I was unsure myself. It was a massive website. Yeah, I went onto the Moz community forums. I posted a technical question. Matthew Barbie, who is now, he's working for HubSpot. Matt's amazing. He built out Traffic Think Tank along with Nick and Ian. He replied, and then he sent me a direct message, and he gave me a really in-depth answer. Now, Matt did not know me, and I did not know Matt, but yet he gave me something that helped me get through that meeting 30 minutes later, and he also made me curious enough to keep learning. So, like, I mean, Matt was actually the first speaker at LearnInbound. I invited him off the back of that. But yet, putting yourself out there and just being curious enough and confident enough to ask a question. So even in itself, you don't need a reading resource sometimes. Just ask the question and know who to ask it to, or just get yourself embedded in the industry. So I keep recommending the Women in Tech SEO group for women. Like, I mean, that's amazing. There is other groups out there, but just start joining them, conversations. And from that, you'll actually start to get curious enough to check out other things. And I think you just need people around you who will support you and nurture you.
I know we've covered that a lot.
It's a tough industry. Yeah, like for me, I wish somebody told me a lot of these things when I got started. That even though as a marketer, you're excited about hosting a marketing event, be realistic about where you're trying to get to next with it. I probably scaled LearnInbound fast when I should have. I probably should have stayed smaller and really developed the experience more and made it more unique than trying to be something we were not. You know, like that's a tough thing. Everyone cares about the event that's growing in size. No one cares about the event that's just staying the same size.
Where can people find you?
I usually use Twitter most of the time, so at Scully Mark, probably the best way to get hold of me. But you can also just email me at mark@learninbound.com. I'm usually pretty slow at emails, but you're better just DMing me on Twitter.
Brilliant. Well, I'd like to really thank you for your time, and it's been a real pleasure, and I hope we've give value to the audience.